So tonight we're going to be a little squirrely. We're going to try to get through 3 chapters tonight. Yes, I know. So buckle your seatbelt, comb your baby's hair. We're going to try to mow through 3 chapters tonight. We're going to be in Exodus chapter 5. And if you'll remember, recap from last time, God met Moses at the burning bush. Moses makes 5 excuses why he can't do what God is asking him to do. He can't go and confront the Pharaoh. He can't say, let my people go. He can't say, hey, you need to change your ways. He says, I can't do it. I can't speak. They're not going to believe me. I don't even know who you are. These kind of things, all of these excuses. Well, finally, God says, well, I'll give you your brother. He'll help you. He'll speak for you. Moses says, good. He and his wife stay at an inn that night, and God wants to kill Moses. Why? Because he nor his son bore the mark of circumcision, which is the sign of God. And God takes that very seriously, because if you'll remember when that was put into place back in Genesis 17, he says, if you don't have the sign of the covenant, then you will be cast out away from your people. So Moses' wife, who was not a Hebrew woman, steps up, steps in, makes the change that will last their lifetime, that they become covenant people with God. Now, picking up chapter 5, verse 1, afterward, Moses and Aaron went and said to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness. But Pharaoh said, who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and moreover, I will not let Israel go. Well, this Pharaoh is a piece of work, right? Right off the bat, he says, no, I don't even know this God that you're talking about. Now, here's the thing about a Pharaoh. Pharaoh's the title. It's not his name. It's like king or prime minister or president. Pharaoh was one, his descendants believe that they come from God himself, the Son, the S-U-N, the Son. And that they were descendants of the sons. They were gods themselves on earth. The things that they said, it was decreed, it was spoken, and he was never, ever, ever going to acknowledge that there was another God besides himself. Because why? If he made that acknowledgement, he then becomes accountable to that God. So he says, there's no way on earth I'm going to live. I don't even know who this God is that you're talking about. And that is not unusual for us to hear these kind of things even today. Do you know why? Because Romans chapter 1 tells us that the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and righteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. And so Paul would tell us in Romans 1 that there's no one who is without excuse, that even creation itself reveals the hand of a mighty creator. So you're without excuse saying that there is no God. You're without excuse denying the godliness and the truth that is almighty. So by instinct and observation, everybody knows there is a creator, but they suppress the truth. And that's exactly what this Pharaoh is doing. He's suppressing the truth that there is a God. Now, this is what I want you to see. Faith is directly linked to accountability. That's why they don't want to admit there's a God. That's why there's people out there that don't want to admit they're a God. Now, I don't think, well, there may be. There's a lot of people thinking there are a lot of things these days. There may not be anybody thinking they're God today, but there may be, right? Who was the lady that won the award that said, I'm a God, I'm a God? Who was that? She run through the, come on somebody. Leave me dangling out here in my own thoughts. Some actress. Anyway, she thought she was a God. But there are people that will deny the existence of God. Why? Because there is this fear of accountability to this God that will change the way that their life would have to be if they admitted that He existed. That's why there's all these little different, like if you had number 1, capital 1, or Roman numeral 1 God, then there's a lot of A, B's, and C's of people that fall under this. There's people that we call theists, people that we call deists. And I mean, they believe there is a God, but you can't really know this God. There's agnostics, right? And there's all these people that fall under this category. But what Paul the Apostle told us in Romans 1 is that you're without excuse. You're without it. Just look around you. Look at the things that are going on. Look at the world that you live in. And I'm not smart enough to go into the science of it all, but I do know this. We live on this big old ball that spins around really, really fast. And if the sun and the moon were any further away from us, right? If the sun was any further away, we would freeze to death. If it was any closer, we would burn up. If the moon was further away, we would float off. There's this gravity, this centrifugal force, everything that keeps us where we are. And if it was just off a little bit, our world would be impacted and life could not exist where we are. And this is out of the millions and millions of planets and stars and things that are out there in our galaxy, the only place life exists is right here. You see, we're without excuse. People say there's no God because they don't want to be accountable to God. Conveniently, illogically, unscientifically bury the truth so that you don't have to admit that God exists. I was watching this documentary kind of thing, and it was on the creation of the world. And it was a scientist who was not a Christian man, but at the end of his spiel of how everything came to be, he says it really comes down to faith. And he says, and I choose to believe there is not a God. I choose to believe that the world was created this way. But he admitted himself that it comes down to faith. That it was just something that he had to believe. He chose to believe. Wow. So whenever the day of judgment comes and people stand face to face and they're going to say, but I never knew, God will say, oh yeah, you did. You just chose not to believe. Secondly, revelation is directly linked to obedience. Pharaoh did not know the Lord, and therefore he had no intention of obeying the Lord. He didn't know Him, so he's not going to obey Him. Do you desire to be obedient to the Lord? If so, the more revelation He gives you of the steps to take and the purpose behind what He's doing. A lot of times we want to know what God's doing and why God's doing certain things in our lives, but we don't want to be obedient. There's more revelation found the more steps of faith that you take. The more you go into doing, the more you find why you're doing what you're doing. But a lot of times it just seems against the grain. It seems like it's not making a difference. But God is saying, look, be obedient to me. And the more obedient you are, the more revelation you get of what I'm leading you into. God never fills up your inbox. He just gives you one thing at a time. If you find yourself thinking, man, I just don't know what God's wanting me to do, I would suggest going back to the last time you do remember God putting something in your heart, something in your life, something that you were prompted to do, and do that thing. And watch how more revelation comes your way. It's linked to obedience. God's good. He doesn't just keep stacking up stuff in your inbox like mine, right? Just keep stacking stuff in there until I'll get to it sooner or later. No, God says, do this thing. And when you do this thing, I'm going to show you the next. And then I'll show you the next. Look at verse 3. Then they said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go a 3 days journey into the wilderness that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest He fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword. Now God never said He was going to do that. Maybe they were just trying to make it sound worse than what it was. But they said, look, let us go worship. God might bring pestilence or war against us if we don't do this. But the king of Egypt said to them, Moses and Aaron, why do you take the people away from their work? Get back to your burdens. And Pharaoh said, behold, the people of the land are now many, and you make them rest from their burdens. The same day Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their foremen, You shall no longer give the people straw to make bricks, as in the past. Let them go gather straw for themselves. But the number of bricks they have made in the past, you shall impose on them. You shall by no means reduce it, for they are idle. Therefore they cry, let us go and offer sacrifice to our God. Let heavier work be laid on the men, that they may labor at it and pay no regard to lying words. Wow. Pharaoh says, oh, you're wanting to go 3 days away from not working? He says, well, let me tell you what, we're going to quit bringing straw to you. We've been bringing straw for you to mix with your mud and stuff to make bricks. We're going to quit doing that. You're going to have to do that on your own. Oh, and by the way, the quota stays the same. You have to do more work and the quota stays the same. Good luck, guys. Quit being so idle out here crying that you need to go somewhere. Wow. Pharaoh is a picture of the world system, right? It's a picture of the world system, continually rejecting the Word of God and saying if you want to follow after that, you are a fool for doing it because it's just going to make things worse for you. I've seen this so many times with new believers. They repent, they put their faith in Jesus, life gets super hard like that. And they say, why did I do this? It was like jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. Why do you think it got so difficult all of a sudden? Because there's an enemy out there that wants to steal that seed of truth away from you, that wants to make it seem like you made the wrong choice. But if you can hang in there, the tough times, God will see you through. New believers, fresh believers, hang in there. Hey, seasoned believers, remember that. When you're doing something for the Lord, Satan doesn't like it. Amen? Look, when I first got saved, this is no joke, y'all. No joke. First got saved, I was plugged in, I was excited about Jesus, and I had this car that, don't laugh at me. It was a Mitsubishi Mirage. Oh, that was a bad boy. Man, I'd pull into the gas stations, everybody look at the Mitsubishi Mirage. It was Eclipse, I'm sorry, Mitsubishi Eclipse. Not a Mirage. Whoa, hold on, everybody. I got my cars mixed up. If you're Googling out there, backspace, Mitsubishi Eclipse. Okay. Whew. It was white, had ground effects on it. Man. Anyway, I bought that car from my ex-girlfriend's dad. That's not a barrel of worms at all right there. And I was paying him payments because I couldn't afford it all at once, so I had to pay him payments. And when I come back into fellowship with the Lord, I'm driving this car to church one morning and smoke starts coming out of the vents. I pull it over under an interstate bridge. I get out and I open the hood. I don't know what I'm going to do. I open the hood. There's just smoke everywhere. And at the same time, almost a highway patrolman pulls up and says, hey, where are you going? I said, well, I was heading to church. He says, what church you go to? And I told him, he says, my sister goes to that church. I'm like, that's awesome. Give me a ride. He says, hop in. So I get the highway patrolman. He takes me to church. After church, I get a buddy to drive me back to my car. When I get back to where my car is, it is a scene. Fire trucks are everywhere. There is blaze going up over the interstate bridge because my Mitsubishi Eclipse was in flames. And I walked up and the fireman was like, is this your car? I was like, yeah. He's like, man, this is bad. You got insurance? I went, no. He's like, do you owe money on it? I was like, yeah. He's like, man, you're messed up. And I was like, I guess. And I started laughing. I don't know why I was laughing. This is not funny. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. Right? And so I go to my ex-girlfriend's dad and I say, see what happened was there was smoke started coming out. There's this fire in the church and the highway patrolman. I was telling him the whole thing. And he looks at me so funny. He says, don't worry about it. I said, when you say don't worry about it, you talking this payment? Or are you talking about? No, don't worry about it at all. We're good. Now, I still owe this man about $1,000 or more. And he said, don't worry about it. It's good. But do you know how bad I stressed between the moment of flames and the moments of talking to him? The pressure seemed more talking to this man than it did watching the flames. And this is right after I'm walking with the Lord, right? And I'm thinking, I'm serving Jesus. Jesus, why did you let this happen? Why'd you let my car go up in fire, man? This is not right. But hanging, what was that? I missed that. Hey, hold on. Those ground effects were awesome. But there's a lot of pharaohs out there that are going to stubbornly insist that that you're serving a false God. See, such bad things would not happen if you were truly serving a good God. That's the world system. That's the pharaoh system. But can I encourage you, hang in there. Hang in there. Listen, I got another vehicle. It wasn't a Mitsubishi Eclipse. It was a 1984 Dodge Dakota long wheelbase, red and white, the peppermint machine. That's what it was. And it had a little thing on the steering wheel that said the boss. And you turn it like that when you... Hey, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. But serving God, we mistake this sometimes. We think it's always going to be easy. But we do have an enemy out there. And he wants to wreck things in your relationship between you and God. And it's not that God is doing anything. It is us growing in our faith through difficulty and perseverance. That's where you grow in your faith. Now, I told too many stories. Let me get moving. So, verse, the taskmasters and the foremen of the people went out and said to the people, thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go and get your straw yourselves, wherever you can find it. But your work will not be reduced in the least. So the people were scattered throughout all the land of Egypt to gather stubble for straw. The taskmasters were urgent, saying, complete your work, your daily task each day, as when there was straw. And the foremen of the people of Israel, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and were asked, why have you not done all your task of making bricks today and yesterday, as in the past? Then the foreman of the people of Israel came and cried to Pharaoh, why do you treat your servants like this? No straw is given to your servants, yet they say to us, make bricks. But the fault is your own people. But he said, you're idle. You are idle. That is why you say, let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. Go now and work. No straw will be given you, but you must still deliver the same number of bricks. The foreman of the people of Israel saw that they were in trouble when they said, you shall by no means reduce your number of bricks, your daily task each day. Wow. Now, I think we would all read this and at least sympathize with their troubles, right? You're not getting the material like you used to get. You have to go get it yourself, but still have to make the same number of bricks. But at the same time, I want you to notice something here. It's this revealing, very revealing. It's subtle, but revealing. Who did they cry out to in their time of trouble? They cried out to the Pharaoh. Who should they have been crying out to? God, absolutely. Look, are you having a hard time? Maybe it's at work. Maybe you got a boss making things difficult for you. Maybe you got somebody loading you down with stuff to do. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe it's somebody in your life that's wanting you to do something more than what you think is reasonable. Can I encourage you not to cry out to people first? Cry out to God. Cry out to the Lord. Listen from Him. What's the hymn that says, what peace we often forfeit? Oh, what needless pains we bear, all because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. You know, it's easy to cry to the Pharaoh. It's easy to cry to other people around us. But I'm going to tell you, it makes a difference when you cry out to God first. When you make Him the priority of your prayer. You make him the priority of what's going on in your life. You make him the number one. The number one, you go to him first. Look at verse 20. They met Moses and Aaron, who were waiting for them as they came out from Pharaoh. The Lord look on you and judge, because you have made us stink in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. Then Moses turned to the Lord and said, O Lord, why have you done evil to this people? Why did you ever send me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you've not delivered your people at all. Oh, come on, Moses. Right? The people come home from work that day and they said, God judge you, buddy, because I just had to work so hard with no material. And now they're killing us out there, and it's your fault because you went to them and you said all this stuff. And then what does Moses do? He turns to God and says, God, why did you do this? This is shades of Adam and Eve, right? Adam, why did you do this? God, it was that woman you gave me. Eve, why did you do this? It was the snake. Right? This is all coming back full circle. But this is what you need to know. And it goes along with what I was saying earlier, that when God sets us free, there's often a price to pay. There can be grief. Grief can be a terrible form of bondage. We become comfortable in our pain a lot of times. We become comfortable in our discomfort because we know what it is, right? And sometimes when God is setting us free of the bondage of the sin and the pain and the things that He wants to bring us out of. Now, this is for a new believer as well as for a well-seasoned veteran Christian. When God is challenging you to walk in new ways, when He's calling on you to do some different things, there's going to be some kind of hurt and pain when you're starting to change. Change hurts. That's why people don't like it. Because it makes me have to think about things differently. It makes me have to see things differently. And I'm not used to seeing it like this. I'm used to seeing it like this. And this is what I'm comfortable with. Now, I'll ask you, what is better for the Israelites right now? That they obey what God is speaking to them through Moses, or that they go back to working for the Pharaoh? What's better for them?
God's always the choice.
God's always the right answer, right? But it's more difficult. It's more difficult for them. It's more work for them right now. No one would have chosen that on their own. If you look at this, more work, less work, I'll take the less work, thank you. But when you're doing things the way that God is asking you to do them, things working smoothly is not always the best sign that God is in it. Sometimes, if you're not getting the pushback, you need to stop and think, wow, am I going in the right direction? Because pushback is part of it. Unbelievable as it seems, they were angry at Moses for disrupting the life that they had grown accustomed to, even though it was terrible for them, right? What God was doing was to set them free. Yes, there was some discomfort along the way, but it was ultimately to set them free from a place that He did not want them to be in, that was going to be bad for them. And now here comes Moses, and it made things worse. So He says, you're to blame. That's what the people were saying. You're to blame, Moses. So Moses cries out to God. Chapter 6. The Lord said to Moses, now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh, for with a strong hand he will send them out, and with a strong hand he will divide them out of his land. I am the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Take myself. I love this part. God is saying, I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I did to them as was necessary in their times of need, and I'm going to do the same thing for you too, Moses. This is the great, awesome thing about God. He reveals himself to us based upon our needs and his purposes. When you are grieving, you will begin to know God as a comforter, him as a provider. When you're needing God to come through in an extraordinary way, he will show himself as God Almighty. He reveals himself to you as your needs are calling out to him. And that's what facet of him that you get to see revealed to you. Do you remember the first time you saw God as provider in your life? You remember that time when you prayed for God to provide something in your life and he did? Do you remember the time when you called out for God? Maybe it was for health or healing, to restore something in your life, and he did. You see, you get to see God reveal himself as your needs open up and you turn to him. Then you get to see that part of him revealed to you. Maybe God has done some extraordinary things in your life and you got to see him as God Almighty. Don't forget that. Don't forget that at all. Because in these next few verses, the Lord is going to show Israel exactly what he wants to be and do for them. Check it out. Verse 6. Of the Egyptians. What does he want to show them? That he's the God of salvation. Right? I'm going to bring you out of there. You're having to bake bricks. I'm going to pull you out of that. I'm going to the rest of verse 6. He's the God of deliver them from the slavery that which used to pull on me, that which used to have power over you. God didn't only just save your life, he set you free from the bondage of sin. Did you know that come along with your salvation? Liberation did. When you called on the name of the Lord and he set you free, he saved you and you became part of his family, right? He also delivered you and liberated you from the bondage of sin, the power that it had over you. Now, I would hope that you who have been saved for a while, that you've seen some sins in your life that God has helped you overcome. Now, there's always going to be stuff that we deal with. Don't get me wrong. But maybe there's some things in your life that God has allowed you to overcome. He's liberated you from that bondage. He's broken the chains of that. What else? Look at verse 6 still. And I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. All of these I will statements of promise by God. And when you know what you don't see in all those verses where he's saying, I will do this, I will do that, he never says, and then you do. This is the essence of the gospel, is it not? The gospel is what God has done. That's why it's called good news, not good advice. Good news, right? Good news. Good news is a lot different, fundamentally different than good advice. Good advice tells you what you need to do. Good news tells you what's already been done. And that's the gospel, and that's what we're seeing here. I will, and nothing about you. It's what God is wanting to do for you. Look at verse 9. Moses spoke thus to the people of Israel, but they did not listen to Moses because of their broken spirit and harsh slavery. So the Lord said to Moses, go in, tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the people of Israel go out of his hand. But Moses said to the Lord, behold, the people of Israel have not listened to me. How then shall the Pharaoh listen to me? For I am of uncircumcised lips. But the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron and gave them a charge about the people of Israel and about Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt. And look, I'm feeling you, Moses. He's like, God, even the people aren't listening to what I'm saying. You think the Pharaoh's going to listen to what I'm saying? I've already been to him once. He shut me down. The people are mad at me now. And now you're telling me to go back and do the same thing again. I don't think it's going to work, Lord. And who am I? I'm a man of uncircumcised lips. Moses is wanting to quit. Well, he wanted to quit before he got started, right? Now here he is again saying, I'm not the guy for the job. I'm not the guy that you think that I am. But what God is telling Moses is stick with the plan, son. Stick with the plan. The plan will work. You just don't think it'll work because you've had setbacks. Man, what is God trying to tell us tonight, y'all? There's going to be setbacks. Stick with the plan. It's not always going to be smooth sailing. Stick with the plan. Keep working it out. Keep walking it out day by day by day, because I am doing something in you, not only among you and around you. I'm doing something in you, and I am working something in you that would never come any other way besides what we're doing right now. Stick with the plan. Well, if you look at verses 14 through 27, this is a genealogy of Reuben, Simeon, and Levi. And I am not about to read all those names. You would not benefit from that. I would suggest you get a Bible, audio Bible, and let them read those names to you. But what God is doing through this, He's connecting the present people in this storyline to the people of 400 years ago to say, I'm still the same God today as I was back then. I know your mama, I know your daddy, your grandma, and I can go back 400 years and I know all of them. I'm still the same today. Don't worry, Moses. All those stories that you've heard about God, that's me. Verse 28. On the day when the Lord spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, the Lord said to Moses, I am the Lord, tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, all I say to you. But Moses said to the Lord, behold, I'm a man of uncircumcised lips. How will Pharaoh listen to me? There's that phrase again. What does it mean to have uncircumcised lips? Those two things don't go together, right? What does this mean? Circumcision was the mark of belonging to God's covenant people, being a partaker of God's covenant promises, right? So when Moses says that his lips are not circumcised, what he's saying is, when I speak, there is no sign of God among me. Right? There's nothing about godliness coming from me. Why would he say that? See, this is not just like a metaphor. He's really saying, God, I don't know this world. I was raised in Egypt. I know that world. I was there for 40 years. Then I killed an Egyptian man, run off. Did I stay with Hebrew people? No, I lived with Midianites. They're not God-fearing people either. You almost killed me in a hotel room because of this whole circumcision thing. I don't know this world. I don't understand it. I don't know the language. I don't know the promises. I don't know the covenant. And all these people are angry. He says, you got the wrong guy. I'm not the mouthpiece for this. Now, I want you to think about this, because I'm feeling Moses' struggle here. Let's just say for an instance that you have a Muslim person who has a radical encounter with Jehovah God. Okay? He converts, he becomes a believer, Christian, and immediately God asks him to go speak to the president of some Islamic country and demand that they change their ways. He's like, I just met you, God, right? This is what you're wanting me to do? And what's worse is he's already gone to the people of that country and tells them what God has said, and they don't believe him. So I'm feeling the struggle here. But God is saying, I need you, Moses, to trust me. But Moses is saying, God, you're putting me in a dangerous situation. And I don't feel like I'm the best guy for the job since I just met you at a burning bush and all. Right? And you know, I've only known you for a little while and you've already tried to kill me once. So we're not on a good track record here. Well, look what happens. Chapter 7. And the Lord said to Moses, see, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet. You shall speak all that I command you, and your brother Aaron shall tell Pharaoh to let the people of Israel go out of his land. I love this. God says, oh, you don't have to tell Pharaoh anything. Just tell your brother. He'll have to tell him. Right? He'll be mad at your brother, not you. Verse 3, but I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and though I multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt, Pharaoh will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt and bring my host, my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great acts of judgment. The Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring out the people of Israel from among them. Moses and Aaron did so. They did just as the Lord commanded them. Now Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh. Now I've got a question here, $1 million question. Are you ready? Did God take away Pharaoh's free will by hardening his heart? Oh, here comes that conversation, y'all. I want to suggest to you that God never deprived Pharaoh of his free will. If anything, I believe he enhanced it. Let me explain why. In the Bible, there's two different words used to describe the hardening of the Pharaoh's heart. Two words. The first word is kabed, okay? And it means to become heavy. The second word is kazak, okay? And it means to be strong or strengthened. One has a positive connotation, one has a negative connotation. When you find it elsewhere translated, what you find is kabed is stubbornness, kazak is courage, okay? So one of the things that you'll need to ask yourself when you're reading through this story, and find you a good lexicon, if you're a word study person, find you one that you can dig into. And what you're going to find out which word is being used when Pharaoh hardens his heart, because there's verses that says Pharaoh hardens his heart. There's other verses that says God hardens Pharaoh's heart. And then there's other verses that just say his heart is hardened. So you have to start asking yourself, who's hardening his heart and what are they doing? When you look through the storyline, God never makes Pharaoh's heart chabed. He never makes him stubborn. But God will often give him kazak, courage. What does that mean? Well, the only thing God does is to give Pharaoh courage for that which he already wants to do. He gives him the courage to continue to fight and pursue his vision and enhance his free will. This is where you're going to find times when Pharaoh, it will seem like he gives up. He says, fine, that's it. I'm done. I throw in the towel, right? If you've read this story, you know how this works. But then the next day, what does he do? Nope, changed my mind. Why? God hardened his heart. God gave him kazak. God gave him courage in his heart to go against it. Because otherwise, with all of these signs and wonders that are going to be happening, he would have given up long, long ago. And never once in this story will God make his heart stubborn. Pharaoh makes his heart stubborn. God gives him courage to continue to fight even when he wants to give up. And I can tell by the look in some of your faces that you don't believe me. Get you a lexicon, dig in, and see. God enhanced Pharaoh for what he already wanted to pursue and do. He just made his heart able to follow through on what he had already planned on doing. He gave him courage. He would have given in. There was plenty of times where he says, I can't do this. Fine, take the people and leave. Nope. Changed my mind. Not this time. This also, if you think about it, can be kind of scary too. Be careful to guard your heart, right? The Bible speaks a lot about people hardening their heart or exalting themselves. I would rather have my heart in such a position that the kazak, the courage of God, strengthens me to do what He wants me to do. To have that kind of resolve instead of the stubbornness that was in the heart of the Pharaoh. It's kind of like the saying that the same sun that hardens the clay melts the wax. What are you made out of? What's already in you? Because that's what gets revealed when the squeeze comes on, right? That which you're filled with comes out when you get squeezed. God is not bringing things on you to make you certain ways. Things don't happen that make you this. You say, well, this happened and it made me angry. No, that anger was already there. It just got squeezed out when the circumstance was right. That maliciousness was already there. That nastiness was already there. It just got squeezed out when the pressure got put on. What are you made out of? This is the same thing that's happening to Pharaoh. Oh, it's not God making him stubborn. God's giving him courage to do exactly what he's already got in his heart to do. Remember, he already told us back in verse 2, who is God? I'm not going to do that. He's already let us know where he stands. Well, now it gets crazy, y'all. Verse 8. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when Pharaoh says to you, prove yourselves by working a miracle, then you shall say to Aaron, take your staff and cast it down before Pharaoh, that it may become a serpent. So Moses and Aaron went to the Pharaoh and did just as the Lord commanded. Aaron cast down his staff before the Pharaoh and his servants, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh summoned the wise men and the sorcerers, and they, the magicians of Egypt, also did the same by their secret arts. For each man cast down his staff, and they became serpents. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Still Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he would not listen to them as the Lord had said. Now, Paul the Apostle will identify two of these sorcerers, two of these magicians. In the book of 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 8, he calls them Jannes and Jambres. Yeah, take a look when you get time. 2 Timothy 3:8, Jannes and Jambres. He said they were magicians. And you find their name, they appear in the Talmud, they appear in some Jewish midrash writings, and they take on this whole persona of everything bad that ever happens in twos. It's these two guys, right? Who were the two servants of Balaam? Oh, that was Jannes and Jambres. Right? They left Egypt with the Israelites. They were part of the mixed multitude. They are the ones that made Aaron worship the golden calf. It was Jannes and Jambres. So it's kind of like a tall tale that anything that goes bad with twos, they get thrown into the mix. But I like the fact that Aaron's snake staff swallows up the other guy's snake staffs. Right? So everybody's making snake staffs all of a sudden. But not everybody can make a snake staff that'll eat the other snake staffs. Say that 5 times fast. Aaron's rod didn't stop the enemy from sending evil his way, but it did eat it up when it got there. That's what the shield of faith is all about, y'all. It doesn't stop the fiery darts of the enemy, but man, it sure quenches the fire. That's what I love about this. All these obstacles slithering your way, view them as a chance for God to show His power in your life. Now, this is far from over because it's about to start the plagues. There's going to be 10 of them, okay? And so the plagues of Egypt, when they hit, there's going to be 2 purposes. One is to show the Israelites that the God of their fathers is going to bring them deliverance. This is why all of the miracles, the signs, the wonders is about to start happening. Because God wants to show His people, I can deliver you, I will deliver you. Second of all, He wants to show the Egyptians that their gods were nothing. Because every one of these plagues is going to punch an Egyptian god right in the face. Okay? The Egyptians, like many pagan cultures, worshipped a wide variety of these nature-based gods. There was a god for the river, there was a god for the rain that would fall, there was a god for the wind that would blow, the crops that would grow. They had a god for all of those things, right? But now, God is going to begin to challenge the power that the Egyptians are giving these gods. Look at verse 14. Then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hardened. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning as he's going out to the water. Stand on the bank of the Nile to meet him, and take in your hand the staff that turned into a serpent. And you shall say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to you, saying, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. But so far you've not obeyed. Thus says the Lord, by this you shall know that I am the Lord. Behold, with the staff that is in my hand, I will strike the water that is in the Nile, and it shall turn into blood. The fish in the Nile shall die, and the Nile will stink. And the Egyptians will grow weary of drinking water from the Nile. I would imagine so. And the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, take your staff, stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over their rivers, their canals, and their ponds, and all their pools of water, so that they may become blood. And there shall be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, even in vessels of wood and in vessels of stone. So he is running around, blood water, blood water, blood water, everywhere. Everywhere there's water is blood. That's plague number one. Specifically, the Nile was turned to blood, right? It's turned to blood. And this is directed at a few Egyptian gods and goddesses and guardians, okay? Turning the Nile to blood was a judgment against the spirit of the Nile, a god that they called Apis. It's a bull who's led by a snake. I find it funny that the rod, he made sure to tell him, get the staff that turned into a snake, get that one. And then you're going to do this. Because who's the spirit of the Nile? This guy right here. This big bull with the weird stuff on him. What kind of hat is that? I don't know. It's a bull that wears a hat. This was also a judgment against Isis, the goddess of the Nile. Okay? You've heard of Isis, yeah? Never have I heard of Isis. I think there was a superhero named Isis at one time, but it was based off of this lady here. And then there was Khnum, the guardian of the Nile. Now that's a man with a bull head. He's bullheaded, but he's a pretty good guy. The Nile River, this is what's so crazy. So the god of the underworld for Egypt was a guy by the name of Osiris, a god that they called Osiris. He was the god of the underworld. And guess what they said was the bloodstream of Osiris? The Nile River. And what turned to blood on God's command? The bloodstream of Osiris. The Nile River on God's command was turned into blood. Pharaoh was told, by this you're going to know I'm the Lord. So let's take the heartbeat of your God here in Egypt, and I'm going to take control of it and show you what I can do with it. All of these guardians of the Nile, spirit of the Nile, in your face. I control the Nile, not them. So look at verse 20. So Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded in the sight of Pharaoh, in the sight of his servants. He lifted up the staff and struck the water in the Nile, and all the water in the Nile turned into blood. And the fish in the Nile died, and the Nile stank, so that the Egyptians could not drink the water from the Nile. There was blood throughout all the land of Egypt, but the magicians of Egypt did the same by their secret arts. What good did that do? Here's some fresh water. Watch me turn it into blood. Now we don't have fresh water anymore. Now we got more blood water. Way to go. It's crazy. Pharaoh's heart remained hardened, and he would not listen to them, as the Lord had said. Pharaoh turned and went into his house, and he did not take even this to heart. And all the Egyptians dug along the Nile for water to drink, for they could not drink the water of the Nile. 7 full days passed after the Lord had struck the Nile. All the rivers, all the streams, all the ponds, all the puddles, everywhere there was clean water had turned to blood, everywhere that they had put the staff. The only way they were finding clean water was to dig down into the bank of the Nile to get clean water to come out. Look, I mentioned this, but don't be fooled. Satan and his demons and demonic forces can do and perform powerful feats, as we're seeing already. But it never does anything to make anything better. It only makes things worse. Right? It's not a single thing that makes it better. They don't have that within them. And if the magicians of the Pharaoh's court really wanted to do a magic trick, then turn the blood back into water. That would have been what you should do. But they couldn't do that. They couldn't do that. They could only make more snakes. They could only make more blood. They just multiply difficulty. Demonic power never, ever, under any circumstance, in any way, proves to be better. It only makes things worse. You wonder why evil multiplies the way that it does? Because it only makes things worse. Told you we were going to get through 3 chapters tonight. But God is starting to show His power to the Egyptians. Moses is still reluctant, but you know what? After this last little thing where he says, I'm not the right guy for this, you're never going to hear Moses say that again. Never again, because when that brother started seeing snake staffs and blood water, he was like, okay, I'm good. I get it. You're God Almighty. Let's pray. Father God, I thank you for your word. I thank you that you show us that you are the powerful one. That you are the one that will give us salvation, liberation, God. You're the one that will give us revelation and adoption. God, you're the one who gives us all the I will promises based on how good you are. Lord, help us to be those that stay the plan, that stay the course, even when difficulty comes, God. Not to get uptight, not to get angry, not to lash out, but to guard our hearts, Lord, from which the wellspring of life flows. So that when the squeeze comes on, when the tough times and the tough circumstances come our way, Lord, that you will prove what's already in us is that a heart that is set to serve you. Help us to be those people, Lord, quick to be obedient. Lord, not making the excuses, but serving you with all we are and all we have. It's in Christ's name I pray. Amen. God bless you guys.